and we're about 12 lines in the bottom. That may be, but I can't guarantee. But you probably missed Thursday. Wednesday.
Wednesday, yes.
Right, Wednesday was the last day we learned, so you missed it.
Oh, that's true.
So we're up to Tez Vav Amud Aleph. It's about 12 lines in the bottom.
After, no, before the verb.
Yeah. The gold one, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 lines to the bottom. Added 2 dots. The gold one, Mashro Bekodnan. In there, when children saw something when they were young, they can testify to us what they saw when they were adults. So it says the Gemara, "Ein money el begodla mashro bekodna." They only believe when they're adults to say what they saw when they were children. Ha bekodna lo. Does it mean that the children not believe in anything which they say? Didn't we learn Tamatzanin and we learned in Bava Basra? I don't believe this is in the Bavli, but it is in the Yerushalmi. Although, actually, I take that back here. It says it's in non-Bava Basra, it's in Bava Kama. And here it is, it does say it's in the Bavli. So, Talmutina, Ne'emenes Isha Katan Lamar Mikan Yotza Nachil. A woman or a child who have the same status in halacha in terms of their testimony are believed to say that from here went out a swarm of bees. Mahal Chatoch Sadeu going into another fellow's field. V'noitels Nachil, and the other person, the person who claims the bees came swarmed from his field can go and take his swarm. Va'ua Markein. So we see here that even a child in his childhood is believed to say that the swarm of bees came from a certain person's field. So why here do we say that he's not believed until he becomes an adult to recall what occurred? So Rabbi Yochanan said, "Lo markin Rabbi Yochanan broka el al nochus of dvarim she'en gzeil dvar Torah." He only made the statement about a swarm of bees where there's no theft on the Doraisa level, because really nobody owns a swarm of bees. Bees are not, unlike horses or cows, you can't own the swarm of bees.
What is the importance? Just out of curiosity.
What's the importance of what?
The swarm of bees.
The swarm of bees. No, one guy wants to claim that they're his.
Oh, okay.
So he has testimony of children to support him.
Okay.
So he's saying that swarms of bees are not, there's no Gezel Doraisa. I'm not sure if you cultivate, why that's true, even if you cultivate hives. But I guess the point is that the hives you own, but the bees in the hives you don't really own, since they swarm from place to place. Yeah, they're not like doves or pigeons where you domesticate them. So, yeah, but even still, the bees will still fly away. You can't claim that you own specific bees. You don't brand the bees. So at Tiny Rabbi Yisrael said, along these lines, you can only claim that the swarm is yours. Besuko, but the branch or the hive, lo, suko is literally a branch, but I assume it's the hive as well. In other words, a person can't say, well, the bees picked up the branch or the hive which they were in and carried it into your field. Because that really, the hives or branches really are generally much more familiar with the field in which they find themselves. So in order to testify that the hive or the branch upon which the bees have made their home belongs to you, you really need bona fide testimony, not just the testimony of a child or of a woman. But the testimony of the child of the woman suffices for the swarm itself. Okay? Rabbi Zira Boikur Rabbi Mono. Rabbi Zira asked for Mono. Lo mistabra. This does make sense. It should be Elo. Elo Asar. Actually, it's not a question. He's proposing. It doesn't make sense to say this only if it's immediate. Halachas man lo. But not after some time's elapsed. In other words, on this swarm piece, if they say immediately after they saw it swarming over to the other side, oh, we saw the swarm of bees go to the other side, then they have credibility. But if it's after some time, we don't give them that credibility anymore. Armlane, he responded, Afanos Sarva claim. I also the same way. Utsina, we also learned in Brisa. When is it true that they have the right to testify, the child or the woman? Shahidu, it should be instead of Ma'amaron, says Kornet should say be Ma'amadon. Ma'amadon means while they were standing there on the spot. But if they went away and came back and then wanted to testify, on the Omer, I say, they were frightened or seduced into saying what they said, and therefore they lose their credibility. So either the child or the woman, when they are children or women, are only believed immediately, but not after some time. But some obstacles were afraid that by that time they've been persuaded to perhaps testify that which is not 100% accurate. But in any event, normally, besides the swarm of bees, even though a child has the right to make not true testimony, but a gilui milsa to recall certain things he saw and establish chazaka thereby, like the Mishnah said, that a cotton is believed when he grows up to say, I remember when I was younger that this kid used to be taken out of school to go to the mikveh to eat truma and things like that. So they're allowed to testify that the testimony only works when they're adults, when they've grown up and they recollect what they saw when they were children. The only thing which works when they're actually children is something like this, which is not even really gezel d'oraisa, the case of the bees, where there's even less of a standard of testimony. So we have actually three standards of testimony. One is full testimony, where you need adults testifying what they saw as adults. The other is gilui milsa, to establish patterns, or chazakos, where you don't need to have real adults. Well, you need to have real adults testify, but they can testify about things they saw which took place when they were children. And the lowest standard of testimony is things where the testimony required is not for a deraisa issue, but rather for a quasi-drabanan issue like bees. There, even children are allowed to testify on the spot what they have seen. Okay? New parak, parak Elunaris. Yes.
How do we get it from Kesuvos?
We were talking about testimony at the end of the second parak. Okay? Elunaris Shishlam Knas. These are the girls who have a knas, meaning if they're raped or seduced, raped, let's talk about rape. Raped during the time they're between their 12 and 12 and a half. So there's a fine which is paid $50 silver dollars, which goes to their father, right? Haba mamzeres, somebody has relations with their, or if there is no father, they goes to, and they're already 12, it goes to themselves. Haba mamzeres, somebody has relations even with a girl if she's a mamzeres, and the Sina, one descended from the Gibeonite tribe, or only quasi-converted to Judaism. Valkutis, one who has relations with a Samaritan woman. Haba Gira, somebody has relations with a girl who was, who became, converted to Judaism. Shivcha, a woman a girl who was released from slavery. Shvuya, a girl who was taken into captivity. In which cases, Shaniftu, they redeemed, or Shnizgaro, they converted, or Shishtachu, or they were released. When they were younger than 3 years and 1 day old. In all these cases, there is a knas. Haba, similarly, somebody who has relations with his own sister, with his aunt through his father, with his aunt through his mother, with his wife's sister, and with his brother's wife, and with his uncle's wife, Balanida, and a woman who's a nida. All these cases, yesh knas, there's a knas. Why? Because the Mishnah holds that even though there's kares in all these cases, ein ben misas beis is not subject to the death penalty at the hands of a court. Now, our Mishnah holds that we don't pass them this way. Our Mishnah holds that kimle b'derabimine, that you only get the more severe punishment, death over money,
only applies to a case where the potential punishment is execution by the hands of court. We paskin that kimle b'derabba minei applies even if the Aveira transgresses one which might potentially generate for you kares, excision at the hands of heaven. But our Mishnah does not hold the way. Our Mishnah says explicitly that it's only Mitzvah's based on we say kimle b'derabba minei, and therefore in all other cases we would say he pays. We don't say you give him the misa, and that the death absolves the payment. Okay? Ksiv says v'lo isha, that she should be for him a wife. Now, this is talking about a woman who you raped, and afterwards she has the right to demand you to marry her. Isha she ru'ya lo. So it's got to be, so we darshan that it's got to be a woman who's suitable for him to marry. So ask the Gemara, Mamzeres he ru'ya lo. Is Mamzeres suitable for him? He's not allowed to marry Mamzeres. So how come he has to pay a fine if he rapes a Mamzeres? So Shimon Lakish Amar Kasef Yishko Kimor Absulos. It says money shall be weighed out like the dowry given to virgins. Reba Khan Basulos Harbi. So it says Basulos in plural. So it's telling us there are many Basulos if you have relations with them that you have to pay a fine, and includes even a case of Mamzeres. Rabbi Zir said Ilav Ksi Basulos. And here the Shari Torah takes apart the next word. He says to be Ilayaksi Basulos Kimohar Yaos. If it would have said Basulos Kimohar, virgins as is their dowry, then you would have been Yaos, you would have been correct. But it doesn't say that. It says Leis Ksiv Kan Elo Kimor Absulos, like the dowry of virgins. So therefore it doesn't indicate that there's more than one Besulo who's being discussed in this pasuk. Said Besulos Kimoar, it would say many Besulos, as is their dowry. However, it says Kimor Besulos means the dowry of Besulos. That doesn't connote any additional women other than the one we assume the Torah is talking about, a normal Jewish woman. So Lil Riba and Akasuv El Mor Bilvad. And all the pasuk coming tell us is that even pasulos, even women who are pasul, who are not valid marriage prospects, still if you marry them to get a ksuva. Okay? Which tells you this Gemara is going like the opinion which holds that a ksuva is the raisa. So since it says kimor pasulos, it means that women who are pasul get a ksuva, but it doesn't tell us anything about paying for if you have relations with a mamzeres. So it says more Vaida Amara. So who tells us that? Where do we learn out that if you have relations with the mamzeres, that you have to pay the fine of $50 silver? So Hadad the Tani Chizkiah, tell that which Chizkiah taught us. It says Ima'ain Avia. If her father refuses to have him marry her, Ainli El Shemi'ain Avia. I only know that if her father can refuse her marrying this fellow, how we even know that if HaKadosh Baruch Hu prevented this fellow marrying her, i.e. by imposing upon her the prohibition mamzerus? How we know there he also has to pay? Because Talmud Lomar, because the pasuk says, Ma'ain yima'ain mikol makom. It says ma'ain yima'ain, superfluous word. One of those words is extraneous. So the Talmud teaches us whether it's the father prevents the marriage or Allah prevents the marriage, nevertheless you have to pay the $50 fine to this girl. So Allah prevents the marriage in the case of mamzeres, so we assume mamzeres gets a fine. So if that's the case, I assume if that's true, Abola Shivcha, if a man has relations with a maidservant, Yela Knas, she should get Knas as well, because the only reason not allowed to marry her is because Kodesh Baruch Hu doesn't permit you to marry a Shivcha. But theoretically, even in that case we just said, that just like a Mamzeris you pay a Knas, so in this case you should have to pay a Knas. So it says the Gemara, Talmud Lomar Mohori Marena Loli Isha. It's got to be a case where you could give her a ksuva and marry her. As she yesh lo avayabo, has to be a case where you can be married to her. Yotza shivcha ramis, as opposed to a non-Jewish maidservant, shein lo avaya, where you can't marry her. Now, look, with a mamzeres you can marry her. It's forbidden to marry her, but if you do marry her, the marriage takes effect. So that's called yesh l'cha bo havaya. You do have a possibility of contracting marriage with her. But by shivcha, there's absolutely no possibility of contracting marriage. So therefore, shivcha, while she's still a shivcha, while she's still a maidservant, is precluded from getting this fine given to women who are raped.
Why is it that shivcha doesn't have havaya? I mean, it's an isur.
No, they have no marriage. They're worse than goyim.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Avodim shvachos have no marriage. Goyim have marriages among themselves. Avodim shvachos have no marriages. They're zir masusim, zir mosim. They're considered to be beyond the possibility of marriage. So, Hesun asks gosh like this: Harei choso. What about your sister? Ein lo avaya boy. You can't marry your sister. V'hu mishayin knas. You pay a knas if you have relations with her. How come? Says Shani yishesh lo avaya etzacher. No, they're different. True, you can't marry her, but somebody can marry her. Another guy. So therefore, she's susceptible to knas. Harei bito. What about his own daughter, where he pays knas, even though he can't marry her? Again, yesh lo avaya etzacher. She can marry somebody else. Ve'enu mishayin knas. So we want to ask the question. Why did she pay a knas? Oh, I skipped it. I misread it. Sorry. It's not a question and answer. It's one long question. Haribita, what about a daughter? She could marry somebody else. Yet if you have relations with your daughter, you don't pay knas. Why not? So it says Mashani, no, your daughter's different. The reason I don't pay knas is through mischai benafsho. It's because you get killed by court. Mischai benafsho ain't mishalim mama. Anybody who's killed by the court doesn't pay money. That's principle. Kimle b'ravmine, we give them the more severe punishment. So therefore, that's the reason by your daughter you're exempt from paying knas, not because she can't get married, she can marry somebody else, rather because you are liable to the death penalty. Nesina, what about a Gibeonite? Rabbi Yossi said, Nesina l'choshlem el mishum p'sulei mishpacha. So Rabbi Yossi said, a nasin is only possible because of a potential problem with his family, which means that he is susceptible to marriage, or she is susceptible to marriage, I should say. It's even though one is forbidden to marry them. That's called a psul mishpacha, right? Like a mamzer. They're exactly like a mamzer in respect. Because if you're going to say mishum sulavdus, that the reason why Gibeonites are forbidden the congregation is because they're like avodim, and they have no possibility of proper marriage. So if that's the case, mi'ata bo nesina lo yeh lo knas. So if that's the case, and somebody has relations with an nesina, with a Gibeonite, she have to pay knas because she's like a shivcha. She's beyond the possibility of marriage. Utziya, we learned in the Mishnah, bo nesina somebody has relations with nesina yesh lo knas. So therefore, must be that nesina is like mamzeres. It's a psul, not of avdus, but a psul of the mishpacha. In other words, it's like mamzerus, not like being an eved.
Although the punishment is supposed to be their water carriers and...
Right, but they're still Jewish. They're Jewish lowlifes. That's what we say. Says Gemara, Kutis, what about a Samaritan woman? So our Gemara says that, our Mishnah says that she gets a fine. Asik Commander, it's going to be which holds Kuti Yisrael Chol Dover. That a Kuti, a Samaritan, is like a Jew. Buran Kamana or Kuti Kagoy, but Koine which holds a Kuti is like a Goy, lo bida. In that case, it's not true that we would say that the Kuti gets a Knas. And this is the Machlokas. The Ispargu, we have Machlokas. Kuti Kagoy, the version Gamliel. Conversion Gamliel is like a Goy, and therefore there's no Knas involved. I'm sorry, Divi Rebbe, according to Rebbe. Rishon Gamliel Omer, Rishon Gamliel says Kuti Ki Yisrael Chol Davar. A Kuti is like Israel, therefore they should get Knas. Says Gemara, Afilu Teima Kuti Kagoy. You know what? Could even to say that Kuti is like a Goy. Kuti Mishum Maim Slim. Why is the Kuti possible? Lo Mishum Goy ve'eved. And it's not because of Goyim and Avodim. In other words, they got mixed in with Goyim, with non-Jews and Avodim and slaves. Abal Yisrael, Goy ve'eved Abal Yisrael, Ubas Yisrael, V'la Mamzer. the goyin and Eved have relations with the Bas Yisrael, the Vlad is a mamzer. Well, mamzer is yesh a knas, and the mamzer says a knas, in which case we'd say that also Kuti says a knas. Or perhaps not that way, says him. Yeah, our mission said a Kuti. Goy Eved Habor, no, we don't pass that way, but the Rabbi Yochanan does. We don't, but Rabbi Yochanan, I think Rabbi Yochanan does. Anyway, it's not a pellet, the Stam of the Yerushalmi has that, because there are Amroim, and I think it's Rabbi Yochanan Paskin said, Goy Eved Habor Bas Yisrael Vlad Mamzer. We, of course, do not pass that way. Paskin is totally Jewish, but there was such an opinion. Anyway, Umamzeres Ishkanas, so we say Mamzeres does have Kanas, and next word should be transposed. Ol Chumra, or Idol Chumra. And we say Kutis loses on both counts. Lene Mishpacha, in terms of a Jew marrying her, we regard them as Goyev Eved Abba Bas Yisrael, or Goyer or slave has relations with a regular Jewish girl. Have La Mamzer, the child's Mamzer, he can't marry into the Jewish nation. Whereas, Tapat Zayin Manalef, Lene Knas, in terms of a fine, maybe at Avi Lev Yisrael, maybe in that case I make the Kutim like Yisrael. And Kisrael, I'm sorry, make them like Yisrael has relations with a non-Jewish woman and a Vlad Goy, and maybe they're considered to be Goyim. Now it's maybe Kutim lose on both counts. One way, losing on both counts would mean that in terms of marrying Jews, they wouldn't be allowed to marry Jews because they're afraid they're mamzeros, right? According being that an Eved or a Goy has a relation with a Jewish woman makes the kid a mamzer. And in terms of Knas, let them not get Knas, because according to Knas, from the perspective of Knas, I look at them as being Psul Goyim. And maybe they are actually Goyim Mamish. And the Goyim Mamish, of course, can't pay the Knas. So maybe I burn the candle at both ends, to use a Hanukkah metaphor, and deprive them both of Knas and of the right to marry Jews. Okay? Says the Gemara doesn't really resolve this question, just leaves it dangling. Yisser says, if a man rapes or seduces an orphan girl, Potter is exempt. Bar said, Machlokas. This is Machlokas. And this is going to Rabbi Yosef Glili. Rabbi Yosef Glili indeed holds this way. Then notice in Fatah say Yisrael, if somebody rapes or seduces a young girl, he's exempt because who's he going to pay to? Right? He can't pay to the father's dead. He doesn't pay to her, she's a Ketana. So you're going to pay to. But Rabbi Akiva says, Yesh or Knas, there is a fine. Uknas or Shatz means she gets kids fined even though she's very young. Rabbi Yosef said, Masnisa Amra, our Mishnah says like Rabbi Akiva, that there's always a fine. Why? Because it says, Mibna Pchusas Mibna Sholosh Anivir Mechod. It talks in our Mishnah about girls who converted when they're less than 3 years and 1 day. In that case, she has no parents. Even if her parents convert her with her, how logically are her parents her parents? No, right? Her parents are no longer her parents. Why is that? Because once you're Megayer, all family ties are severed, right? There are no formal family ties, halachic family ties, right? So if that's the case, so how are you paying Yisoma? How does the previous Brisa say you pay Yisoma Knas? How could you get it? She's a child, right? So it must be rather that a child, Yisoma actually has Knas. Votani, wait a minute, it gets worse. It's not even machlokas, it seems. Then we learn Rabbi Yosef himself says, Tachas asher inoah, because he tortures, got to pay. Means anybody torture. Rabbi says, Yisrael l'knas, that even so often a girl, she gets paid. Div Rabbi Yosef see Rabbi Yosef owes Yisrael gets knas. I used to say before, Rabbi Yosef owes Yisrael, but doesn't get knas. So Rabbi Yachi said, I'll tell you how to work it out. He brought there, resolved it, Yisrael Glili would say like this, kids like this. Shebola achalo meis avia. He had relations with her before her father died. Umeis avia, and then her father died. So kfar nira litain lavia. So then you already could have given to her father. She is a ktana. she's a minor, she shouldn't get it. But since you had relations with her before her father died, and then he became liable to give it to her father, so that requirement still remains incumbent upon you. Okay? So therefore, even once the father dies, you give it to the next of kin. The next of kin, if it happens to be a soima, a young child. So you give the young child. In that case, the young child gets a knas. So it's not directly the young child got a knas, but rather since it went to the father and the father died, so that's why it deflects to the son, the daughter. Okay? It says more further. Timothy, we learned over there. Now, at first it's more, it seems to be totally irrelevant and a non sequitur, but it gets back. Timothy, we learned over there. Hochel truma mezid. If somebody eats truma intentionally, right? He's a non-Kohen, eats truma intentionally. Mishayim is karen, he pays the principal. Ve'en mishayim is chomish, but not the additional fifth for atonement. Okay, must be that you pay even though you're chayav what for eating truma? If you're a zor, what do you get for eating truma? If you're a non-Kohen, what do you get for eating truma?
Malchus?
No. Zapped by heaven.
Oh,
Chorus, right? Or Misa B'dei Shemayim, good name, and that kind of stuff. So here it says quite clearly you pay nonetheless, right? You don't pay additional fifth for kapara because you ate it and made it, but you pay. Utina, we learned, so it's a kasha, it says, Eluena Lokin. There's a brisa, a very famous Mishnah, I should say, in Masech Makos, which is difficult on two counts in our sugya. One is that there it says if you eat truma, you get flogged. And we're just learning if you eat truma, you have to pay. The other is that it says there that for relations with your sister, you get flogged. And here we learned that you got in our Mishnah that you got to pay. So how do you reconcile the two? So it says the Gemara. One place you say floggings, that's makas. The other place you say payment, that's ksuvas. How do you reconcile the two? So it says Rabbi Yochanan, it's done, and he must nisa. You read the brisa on the side, or indirectly, or in two separate parts. It's not clear always to me what it's starting means. But anyway, here's the way to read it. Says the Gemara, imi trubo loke. If they warned him that he's going to get malchus, then he gets malchus. Below trubo, if they didn't warn him he's going to get malchus, then mishalim, then he pays. In other words, that the warning makes it chai malchus. Without the malchus, it's not chai malchus. Without the warning, it's not chai malchus.
So you say kimlei d'rabbanan by malchus.
What?
So you say kimlei d'rabbanan by malchus.
Well, it's not connected with kimlei d'rabbanan. Just a minute. It says Gemara. Sorry, Meimar. Rabbi wanted to say b'makom malchus l'tashlumim. In the case where you can potentially get both flogged and pay, so then mishaliv and aloiker, you pay and you don't get flogged. As more b'yoker b'shalim, why not? Or even the other way, let him get flogged and then pay. Says Mar Kedei Rishoso. No, you can only get chayiv Kedei Rishoso. Mishum Risha Achas Atom Mechayvo v'Yatom Mechayvo Shum Shtei Rishus. You only give him one evil punishment and not two. So this is the fundamental Gemara to teach us that Rabbi Yochanan holds that Kedei Rishoso means that you can only give Malchus or Mammon, but not both. Okay? Except for the exceptions to the rule, which we'll see in a moment. Now, Rish Lakish argues. Rish Lakish says that though his opinion is brought down only a line later, maybe the line has to be moved here, but let me tell you outside anyway. Rish Lakish holds that you, in the case of Malchus and Mos, you indeed get only one punishment. What's the punishment you get? In case you get flogged, you pay. Rabbi Yochanan says you pay. What does Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish hold? You get flogged. Very good. Okay. Okay. He knows how to use process of elimination. So name it. So says the Gemara, hey, wait a minute. If you shalom lo yilke, well, how do you say, why not? We'll let him pay and not get malchus. Says more, b'mishi yesh bo shtei rishuyos hakosim medaber. Let's go back to the same place Rabbi Yochanan says. We're talking about a guy who's got two evil strikes against him. He did two bad things. One generates malchus, one generates mama. And it says, "V'fila shofi kol lefana k'nei rishos mispar." It says the judge should knock him down and flog him. So it must be, if we're talking about the judge knocking down and flogging immediately after Kedei Rishoso, it must be that we give flogging and not money. That's Rabbi Shimon Lakish's proof. Okay? Rabbi Shimon Lakish Amar Afilo Yisru. Even if he didn't give us he can't get Malchus, Eino Mashayim, he still doesn't have to pay. Now, this is an important case. If a person could have been Chaim Malchus, but it's not, because he didn't get Asra, he still, according to Reish Lakish, doesn't have to pay in that case. Because the Malchus, even the potential, the dormant, the theoretical Malchus, exempts it from having pay. Right? Says the Gemara, Masisa Pli Rosh Hashanah, the following brisa actually seems to argue Rosh Hashanah. It says there, Ha'ochel Truma Shol, somebody eats Truma unintentionally. Meshayim is Kenes Chomesh, you pay the principal on the fifth. Now that's not the Kasha. The Kasha is from the Seifa, which was, we actually noted before. The Kasha of the Seifa is that if you ate Truma b'mezid, and you are not a Kohen, what do you have to do? If you eat Truma intentionally, you're not a Kohen, what do you have to do? What? Pay! But like the Shlokish, what should you have to do? Get Malchus, get flogged. Kasha Shlokish, right? Says the Gemara, if they warned you, shouldn't at least if they warned you, shouldn't you get Malchus? So it says Pasuk cried Meir. He holds that Mishnah which says that by Trumas you pay, it's going like a Meir. Right? Meir has a Gevaldik Shita. He has a tremendous approach. Double whammies. Gevaldik. So that Mishnah is going like Meir, it says double whammy, and therefore, when it says you pay, not to the exclusion of not being flogged. No, Avada, we flog you as well. Okay? Says, so that's where he learns going like Meir. Masisa Pli Rav Shimon Lakish. What about our Mishnah? Then now we come full circle back to our Mishnah. Our Mishnah seems to argue Reish Lakish. The thing it says in our Mishnah, El Nar Sheish Len Knas. These are women who have to, if you have relations with them, you have to pay a fine. Ilu Isu Boina Loke. Well, in our Mishnah, it doesn't say anything about Malchus, so it sounds to Mishnah, even if they warn you, and you get Malchus, you still have to pay the fine. How come? You should either be only Loke or Mishalim, not both. So it says the Gemara, no. Patzalak Remeir. Remeir holds Take, Amish Remeir, Remeir, Loka Mishalim. Meir says you can pay and have to get flogged as well. The Avob Shemar Shimon Lakish said, Min Motzi Shemar Loman Remeir. Meir learned his svara from Motzi Shemar. For a person who after his wedding night came and said not nice things about his wife, that he found that she wasn't a psula. That's called a Motzi Shemar. So it says there, Motzi Shemar Loman Remeir, it says, V'Yisrael, so they should torture him, Makos, that means beat him, V'Otro, so mama, and pay him all, and make him pay also money. So we see Adam Zomim at least have to pay both, right? Not Adam Zomim, sorry. Motzi Shemar has to do both. So it's a kasha on Rabbi Yochanan, says the Gemara, Rabbanan Amin, Rabbanan say, meaning Rabbi Yochanan, L'chidushat, and whoever's with him, L'chidushav Yotza Motzi Shemra. Motzi Shemra is a chiddush. Right? Motzi Shemra, well, Gemara's going to explain why in a moment. The davar sheyatz chiddush, anything which is a chiddush, ain't loim the we can't extrapolate from there. What's the chiddush by Motzi Shemra? A person never chai based solely on his statements. The kan adam is chai b'dibura. Here, a person is judged to be liable based on a statement that his wife didn't have b'sulin. Right? His wife is no longer a b'sula. So therefore, if here a person is chayiv just for speaking, whereas a person normally not chayiv just for speaking, so that's why here it's a chiddush also at loika mishalim, right? Since that's the case, you can extrapolate from your table yourselves, Ain at lo imenu lo onshim lo because you can't learn of it neither the penalty of money nor the penalties of floggings. So, interesting thing, before we go on, the Bible says that the reason why it's a chiddush to say that Moti Shem has to pay is because it's a lav shem bo maisa. It has to pay and get flogged. It's lav shem bo maisa. Normally, lav shem bo maisa, wherever you don't do a deed in the course of transgressing the prohibition, you don't bring a korban. Yet here you have to bring a korban. You don't have to get penalized. You're not getting a korban here. You don't have to get flogged. But here he has to be flogged nonetheless, even though it was a shoygig, right? So two ways of dealing with that. How do you find case the guy is shoygig is the flogged? How do you deal with that? I messed up. Sorry, he's not shoygig and flogged. I messed up. I take it back. Let me rephrase myself. I don't know. I was thinking. Probably wasn't thinking. Lav shape of Isa. The Bible says the reason why Motzi Shem is a chiddush you can't learn from Motzi Shem, it's Motzi Shem with a lav shape of Misa. Normally for lav shape of Misa you don't get flogged. Motzi Shem gets flogged nonetheless. So it must be the Motzi Shem is unique, and therefore you can strive for there that where else in Torah local Mishalim a person get flogged and have to pay as well. The Yerushalmi is saying the reason why Motzi Shem is different is because Motzi Shem is transgressed b'diburo, with your statement, as opposed to with your b'diburo by your statement. So it sounds like this is the same thing as the Bavli. When the Bavli says lav shebo maisa, and the Yerushalmi says you transgress your dibur, it sounds like it's the same thing. But I'm not sure 100% about that, because Karmei Epnei Moshe saying something about that diburo means that through the Eidim, which I don't know exactly what that means. That with the Eidim will come and say your wife didn't have psulim, somehow you're zocha with your taina. So I don't understand exactly where they're throwing in a monkey wrench. But it sounds like it's more or less the same thing. What do you want to say?
I think it is. There was something, I think, in the discussion that Mar has by Eidim Zomerman that discusses that the wives of the chiddush because they did an aver b'diburo. Isn't there something like that?
Yeah, there is such a thing.
And the explanation, I think, Rashi over there is because it's a lav shem bo ma'isa. I mean, I somehow.
Lav shem bo ma'isa. Okay, fine. That's right. Says Umar, lo ken Rabbi Yavo b'shem Rabbi Yochanan, and the precedent is like this. In Rabbi Yavo saying Rabbi Yochanan, meiz b'chelev, a person. Oh no, it's the kasha actually. I was actually a brilliant kasha. I forgot. Now it came back to mind. Okay, lo ken Rabbi Yochanan. This is really a very brilliant kasha on Rabbi Yochanan. You have to come more credit for this one. Listen to this one. After that build-up better be good, right? Meiz b'chelev. V'shoygeg b'korban. A person intentionally ate chelev, but he didn't know he's chayav a korban for it. Now, of course, he shouldn't be chayav a korban, right? Because he did it in Mezid. But there's a shita back in Masechta Shabbos, which both in the Bavli and Yerushalmi, that a person was Mezid in all aspects of his deed, except he forgot that there's a potential korban for doing this bad deed.
I remember that in Yerushalmi.
Right? That he has to bring a korban.
Right.
Okay, there has to be a korban because it's the definition of shogeg, which means that even if you're just shogeg in one aspect, that you forgot there's such a thing as korban involved in this, if you transgress this avera, so then he could bring a korban. Okay? So you have a potential scenario in which a guy can be mazed. You can go and eat a chelev, forbidden fats, been mazed. Yet nonetheless be chayav a korban. Now, if this is the case where he ate the forbidden fats which belong to another fellow, to another individual, so besides that he has to do what? He has to pay. But that's not our issue here. In this case where he didn't maze it, he has to get flogged. So he's actually getting flogged for having transgressed an avera, and he's also paying a korban, right? That's it says here, Masrimbo, if you give Masra, like a maybe korban. He gets flogged, he has to bring a korban. Ve'kol like a mishalim, so that's the case. We see you can have double whammies. Even according to Rabbi Yochanan, you have the double whammy of getting flogged and having to bring a korban, so here let's give you the double whammy of getting flogged and having to pay. What's the difference? Very good question. Rabbi Boom Bar Chia B'Shem Bar Yishmael Bar Yitzchak said, Amar Kedei Risha, so no. Kedei Rishoslo tells us we only give him one penalty. In what case? Shnei Dvorim Mesurim LeBeis. When the two penalties are given over to the hands of Basin, you can only grab on and give him one of them. As opposed to when at least one of the penalties is at the hands of heaven. So therefore, when you eat chaylev, well, actually, when you eat chaylev, you're chayav malchus b'dei adam, but the korban you're chayav to Kodesh Baruch Hu. That one does not override the other. Kedei Rish also means when you chayav two penalties in Basin, so Basin only gives you one. When you chayav one penalty in Basin, one to Kodesh Baruch Hu, there, gesundheit, I can give you both penalties. Right? Excuse me?
Yeah, I just said I see. So it's not Kedei Rishos.
Right. So it's not Kedei Rishos, so not a court procedure. How come everybody agrees, however, that if you're chayav the death penalty, you don't have to pay? From where do we know that? Where do we learn that? From here. Makabei Yerushalmi, it says if you smite an animal, you pay for it. If you smite a human being, you put to death. Just like by smiting an animal, the boat, there's no distinction made between shogi was accidental. The mazer are intentional, regardless, you have to pay. So if you smite a human being, you don't have to draw a distinction between intentional and unintentional. If by the intentional scenario, you get killed and you don't pay. Lepotra mama and I'm not going to look a little bit show the maze of poacher moment. In other words, by intentional scenario you don't have to pay, so even by the unintentional scenario you don't have to pay as well. So that means that even if you're shogeg, in something which potentially could put you mitzvah spacing, that's enough to get you off the hook for having to pay. It's like by Maccabee, or whether you're shogeg or mazing, you have to pay for the animal. The flip side is true by human being. Whether you're shogeg or mazing, you don't have to pay for the human being. Okay? So it means you only get the one penalty and not the second penalty. What's the penalty you get? You only get the misa, not the mama. Now, even if you don't get misa because you did it b'shogeg, since by Mesa the Misa would have exempted the Mama, the death would have exempted having to pay the taxes, so too, or whatever obligation you have, so too, even in Shogeg, we didn't actually come to death penalty since you were subject to death penalty, at least hypothetically, so it affects your affects your payment, and you don't have to make a payment either. Okay? So it says the Gemara, of that, everybody agrees. Mapli, what's the machlokas? B'momenates marcus, where you're chayav potentially either money or flogging. Rabbi Yochanan ein momenates misa. There's no, you don't pay when you're potentially chayav death. However, yesh momenates marcus. However, you pay when you potentially have to get flogged, and the payment supersedes the flogging. Shimon Lokish says, "Keshem shein momam eitzel misa." It's like you don't pay money. Where's the potential death penalty? So there's no paying of money. Where time to Shimon Lakish. What's like Shimon Lakish? Who says you get flogged and not paid? Russia. Xer Shava. Parallel. Nema Russia Mukhave Misa says Russia by the person who's liable to be put to death. Finema Russia Mukhave Makil says Russia by the person who's liable to be flogged. Ma Rosh Hashanah. So he says the word Rosh Hashanah makes it pays it, but someone's liable to the death penalty and mominate. So he says they don't pay where they're potentially liable to the death penalty. So too, after Rosh Hashanah, so too the Russians discussed when people are trying to be flogged. So we say a mominate Marcus. You don't give monetary penalties where you can give the flogging. Okay? Now, that's all the Shitas Rabbi Yochanan. Now we have a third Shita. Nasam Barashi Amar. This Mishnah says, coming to our Mishnah, Kambanara, Kambanogeris. He says, why in our Mishnah does it say you have to pay, and above Makkas it says you don't have to pay? It depends. By a Nara, if she's under 12 and a half, you got to pay. If she's a Bulgaria, she's over 12 and a half, you don't have to pay. Says the Gemara, Nari Shaknas, a girl who's Nara between 12 and 12 and a half has a knas, Vein Lamakas, so she doesn't get flogged. Bulgaris Ish Lamakas, she gets flogged. Ve'ain La Knas, but she has no knas. So says the Gemara, I don't understand. Ve'ain La Bosha Subkam. What about Bosha Subkam? What about her embarrassment? What about her damage? So if that's the case, how can you say by a Bulgaris there's nothing? By a Bulgaris at least should be Bosha Subkam, right? So it says the Gemara, Rabbanan Kesarin Amrin, the rabbis of Kesarin said that Amati Potter, we're talking about a case, it was out there about a case, she obviously mistaken in gears of she seduced him. Oh, Shemachlo, or she forgave in the Bosha Subkan. So those cases, we say that she forgoes altogether. She only has, by Bulgaris, only has Malchus and does not have any payment. So it says the Gemara, V'sav Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Tzorn Nesem Baruch holds, B'mokom Malchus v'tashlumin. It depends what you're facing. If you're facing Malchus and payment, B'shalim in a loka. So you pay, you don't get Malchus. Why don't you pay and get Malchus both? No, only one Risha. You don't give them double indemnity. Now it should be let it get flogged and not have to pay. Now we say it's like Game Zomin. You brought that name Zom before. Like we say over there, Beinim Zomim, Mishalmin, they pay, Beinim look and don't get flogged. Because so to Mishalmin, look, you pay, you pay and you don't get flogged. Okay? Rabbi Yerushalmi said, time of the Rabbi Yosef Bar Yoshua, the larger Rabbi Yosef Bar Yoshua is Kidei Rishoso, very beautiful shah, which is not in the Bible. It says Kidei Rishoso, Esher of Yetzos Midei Rishoso. If a person's makos stem from his evil, then we give him malchus. Yotzos Esher Omrim Lo Amod V'Shalem. Suppose the person we say, go out and pay. Meaning, basically, that Kidei Rishoso applies for a blue-collar crime. Okay? As opposed to a person who commits a white-collar crime, we tell him, not that the crime is less heinous, but we say that you can get the money, go and pay for what you for the negative ramifications which you caused. So in any event, what comes out is like this: Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish have malchus. According to Rabbi Yochanan, if you got hasra for malchus, you get malchus. However, according to Reish Lakish, even you didn't get hasra for malchus. Malchus is what you get. That's the penalty, right? However, according to Rav Nosson Bar Yoshua,
What's happening? Reish Lakish, what's Reish Lakish from Yochanan again?
Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish have malchus what the default assumption is. According to Rabbi Yochanan, the default assumption is you pay and don't get malchus. According to Reish Lakish, the default assumption is you get malchus, you don't pay. But even Rabbi Yochanan agrees if you warn or hold, if you got asra, when the guys gave you asra, they said, Yankel, don't do that aver because otherwise we're going to flog you. So then after the fact we flog and we don't make him pay. Okay, even though normally odds we make him pay, but if he had got asra specifically for the purpose of malchus, it's not true. Okay? In that case, we give him flogging and not money. However, that's not true of Nosson Bar Yoshua. Nosson Bar Yoshua's third opinion is that even if they gave him asra and said, Yaakov, we're going to give you malchus, since money is an option, you never get malchus. Ever. It's not possible to introduce malchus into this scenario. Okay? Says the Gemara, Masisa Pli Rishim and Lokish is following Mishnah seems to argue Rabbi Shor, my price seems to argue Rishim and Lokish. It says the Ochel true, and this really is what we said before in Amar Aleph already, and we're repeating it. The reason we're repeating it is because we brought in now a third sheet of Nosson Bar Yoshua, so therefore we want to go through some of the old questions again. So we say, Masisa Pli Rishim and Lokish, the price seems to argue Rishim and Lokish, there's the Ochel Truma Mezit, so means Truma intentionally, Misham is a Karen. He has to pay. In Yerushalmi, it's the Chumash, he pays the principal, he doesn't have to pay the extra fifth. So, Al Daita Reb Nasser Barashi, according to Nasser Damar, Mishalmi always pay Nichel makes sense. Al Daita Rabbi Yochanan Damar Yisubo Loike, according to Rabbi Yochanan says if he gave Masor, he should get Malchus Fim Lavin, Loisubo, didn't get a Masor, then he pays. Possible of Mazid, so let's just say about a case where Mazid below Asra. That's why he has to pay. Because it was intended without Asra, specifically for Malchus. Al Daita Shemen Lakish, Lo Shana Yishoyu Mazid. So according to Shemen Lakish, it's difficult. If it doesn't matter if it's Shoyu or Mazid, he Trubo, he's Lo Trubo. It should make no difference. You should only get Loka and not Mishalim. So why do you have to pay here? So it says more, just like we said in our mouth, Kramer, like Kramer. Like Kramer said, Motishem Adamar Loika Mishalim. So to extrapolate from there, Totally Summa Torah and in Loka Umishalim. So it says he has to pay, that's besides the Malchus he faces as well. Amre Echina Kume Raimona. Rabbi China said for Raimona. Va'afili is Bartapi Zaminav. Va'afili is Rishim Elokish Kol Masisa Raimir. Yerushalmi Kesuvos says, every Mishnah which says you gotta pay, that's what it means, not just you gotta pay, but you also have to get flogged. Okay, this is the thing. But cry mer, what's gonna do psukim? Psukim sound like all you have to do is pay, not get flogged. V'aksiv doesn't say, ish kiyochal kodesh bishkoga, says there, if you eat kodesh unintentionally, shalem yishalem, you gotta pay. We know if you commit mila intentionally, you have to get flogged. But it says that if you commit unintentionally, you just pay. Why, according to Shlokas, you should be exempt from paying, right? So it says, more Elamizbar Savar, rather, Rishim and Lakish holds, Chomesh is a korban. The reason they're exempt from Chomesh is because Chomesh is a korban. Chomesh is like the additional 50 you pay, if you don't intentionally, is a korban. It's a sacrifice. A sacrifice you don't pay b'mezid. Says more, Shkoyach! I feel tamer chomish korban. Even say the extra fifth is a korban. But Karen korban, why does the guy have to pay the principal? The Chorah shayach to Malchus. The shayach to Malchus shouldn't even have to pay the principal. So Rabbi Yerushalmi said, very strange thing, but interesting. Masdi Samra, this price, it tells us Karen Knas, that the even the basic payment, if you eat truma, is considered to be a knas. And this is a fascinating concept. And what it means is like this. If I eat truma namazor, how do I pay you back? How do I pay you back? If I eat truma namazor, what do I give you? What does the karen consist of? Let's say it's not supposed to. It's supposed to consist of fruit. What kind of fruit do I give you?
Same kind.
What's its status? Chulin or truma?
It's truma, isn't it? No, it can't be.
What are I giving? Chulin.
So
But it becomes truma. In the hands of the coin becomes truma. Special exeris kosov. It metamorphosizes into truma. The thing is like this. What I ate as truma was worth truma money. So if I had 5 pounds, truma is probably worth 99 cents. If I'm giving chulin, I'm giving him actually 5 times 99 cents a pound, right? So give me whatever, 5 times as much. So therefore it comes out that even the keren given for truma is a knas. Says Rish Lakish, I'm not talking about knasos. When I said Loika Bein Rishayim, it's only a payment of money. There I say the malchus supersedes the payment, then all you get is malchus. But you're talking about paying for truma, that's a knas. That's a fine. Fines can coexist and it can be loka umishalim. When I said ain't a loka umishalim, it's only talking about money. But this is loka umishalim because it's a knas. And it's the time we learned over there, ain't a umishalim truma, you don't pay truma if you ate truma. And chulin metukanin, you give proper chulin, which is mesukkan already, right? Mitzvah b'teirah. Very nice in truma, they become truma. So ilmi masha'achal ava mishalim nicha. You'd be right if he paid what he ate, but he doesn't, and therefore we say that quite clearly it's a knas. Furthermore, I'll give you another proof, even better proof. The other time that it says achal truma tmeya, even a truma tmeya which is worth mamish zilcho, right? Mishayim chulin torim. You pay full with chulin torim. Mishayim chulin tamei you have to be the evidence if you pay with chulin tamei you I'd say. But lo tamei eitzim muchayev lo. What's truma tamei? It's wood. It's not food, and yet you have to pay with food. Adam Rasha keren knas. The teacher says the keren by eating truma is a knas. So kamad atomar keren knas kavos a chomesh knas. Just like the keren is a knas, the chomesh is a knas, and therefore the bottom line is that you can't extrapolate from that to any other case in Torah. There, in fact, you might pay and get malchus, right? Because that might be unique in that the payment is a knas and not tashlumin, right? Now, so again, we see that Reish Lakish holds that you get malchus. Sometimes they say malchus and tashlumin, but malchus is supreme. And how does he know that that's the case? Good question. El Rishim Melokish Kedaite. Shayla is like a sign of reasoning. Like it says over there by Adam Zomim. Everyone is forbidden to testify falsely. It says that two Teinim Zomim, as they plotted, also selling their brothers, what does it mean? Lo Shishali Momo means he's got to pay, right? The Kodesh. Here too it says, all foreigners should not eat Kodesh. Then it says somebody does eat Kodesh Bishkoga, Sheishalim Momo, right? He has to pay money, right? So the Vatani, so didn't we learn Modi Chachon Amer, Begone Trumas Chavero?
I think it's actually a separate case. 1 second.
Yeah, this is a separate case. Let's leave this for tomorrow night. Okay, so the bottom line is the Shimon Lakish is coming and telling us that the reason we have to pay money in the case where you eat truma is because of the special pasuk of Chozar Le'ochel Kodesh Yatzav Ishki Ochel Kodesh B'Shkoga Sheishalim Momo. That's teaching us that even though normally you say that for a for a problem such as committing an avero for which you chayav karb malchus, you shouldn't pay. But here it's a special knas which the Torah imposed, and therefore here you would get knas, and I'm not sure. Perhaps knas and malchus, perhaps knas without malchus, because it could be that the knas itself is sufficient. But in any event, here even Reish Lakish agrees because of the nature of the payment that it's knas and not malchus. That at the very least we can both. It might only be knas, but you can't extrapolate for it to anywhere else in the Torah. Everywhere else in the Torah, Reish Lakish will say, if you're faced with the possibility of malchus and mammon, you get flogged and you don't get mammon. And of course, that's his machlokas Rabbi Yochanan. So very important to remember, just take away from tonight, among other things, is that three-way machlokas. You have Rabbi Yochanan says, Kedei Rishoso means normally you pay, unless you were warned that you'll get malchus, in which case you get malchus. Reish Lakish says you always get malchus. Or Nosson Rosh says you always pay money. Okay? So Rabbi Yochanan holds it's variable, the other two are absolute in what they hold.